I would like to call this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Redmond City Council held on Tuesday, November 21st, 2023, commencing at 6:00 p.m. Council members in attendance are Council President Forsyth, Council Vice President Kritzer, Councilmember Anderson, Councilmember Carson, Councilmember Fields, and Councilmember Stewart. This meeting is being held to discuss the Health Through Housing Operational Agreement and Timeline. Carol Helen, Director of Planning and Community Development, will introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members, and all of the guests that are joining me tonight, who I'll introduce here in a minute. I just want to take a brief moment to kind of explain the context where we are and the purpose for this meeting tonight. So the first thing I'm going to just talk to you briefly is the agenda, and we'll get that up there in just a minute. Tonight, we're going to provide, the county is actually going to provide an update on the background and history of Health Through Housing. We're going to do a little bit of a grounding in our understanding of Health Through Housing that includes permanent supportive housing and emergency housing. That was a question. And eligibility, the referral process, vision for the Redmond site specifically, some governance issues and code requirements, and then the community advisory group and its status, and then next steps. What I do want to say just before we get into the materials, we do have a lot of materials in your packet this evening. We have the draft operational agreement between the county and the city that requires our council to approve it. Then the executive from the county would also approve. We have the draft service agreement that is between the council or the county and the Salvation Army, members of which are here tonight. And then we provided the issues matrix that responds to the themes that we heard in the materials that were submitted by the public, and also questions that were posed by the council during your last meeting on Committee of the Whole. So we're actually seeking approval for the operational agreement and draft, or not the draft services agreement, but the operational agreement on December 5th. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic to the county, but I do want to do some brief introductions. So we're joined this evening by Brooke Buckingham. She's our Human Services Manager. We're joined by the county with Kelly Ryder and Carol Ann Sanders. And then you know Sarah Fee Allen, the deputy here in Planning and Community Development. And then from Salvation Army, we're joined by Matt Garrett and Captain Felicia Grant and Arlene Hampton. So thank you very much. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Kelly.
That sounds great. Thanks, Carol. So Kelly Ryder, I'm the Chief of Staff for the county's Department of Community and Human Services. It's good to be with you all today. I think we've got a first slide up here that is a history of where we have been and where we're going, which is a good place to start. Because some of you were with us as we announced that the county was purchasing the building that is formerly the Silver Cloud way back now in July of 2021. Since then, we have done a lot of different pieces of work, but this is really the moment where we are excited to be able to pivot and really start opening this building for the intended population. So I just want to say thank you for all of your partnership, especially over the last 2 years, but in particular as we solidify what that partnership will look like over the next many years of the permanent occupation and ownership that the county intends to have over this building. So on the slide, you'll see we purchased the building in July of 2021. If we can go back one slide. You'll also see, as a reminder, that in the spring of 2022, we also opened this building to be able to serve refugees that were coming over specifically from Afghanistan. At the time, we knew that we were anticipating refugees from the Ukraine as well, but really being able to have that building as such a warm and inviting place for the community. I know many of you stopped by and were part of different events. We had lots of community members reaching out to be able to support the folks that were staying in that building. And so while it has been a couple of years that we've owned the building has absolutely been used for such a vital and important purpose. And it allowed us then to transition into selecting an operator. So that's where we went as we were transitioning the use. We selected an operator. We went through the full procurement process in partnership with your city staff. And that's why we've got the Salvation Army here at the table with us. They were the selected applicant out of that procurement process. And we now have been able to start convening the community advisory group as determined by your city code and be able to really make sure that we're grounding the operations of this building in both the values of the community as well as the values of our health through housing implementation plan and the values of the county in making sure that this is a warm and welcoming place for folks to live. So now if we want to go to the next slide. Just a bit of a reminder about what the Health Through Housing Initiative is that does dictate how the county will be operating these buildings. Under our Health Through Housing Initiative, we've used state sales tax authorized funds through House Bill 1590 to be able to purchase and operate all of our Health Through Housing buildings. The county has an underlying code and ordinances that dictate exactly how we need to spend our sales taxes, and it also passed an implementation plan both from the Regional Policy Committee that includes representatives of the Sound Cities Association, as well as our full county council. And so as we think about kind of the underlying laws and different kind of policy direction that we're kind of sitting with here tonight, just want to kind of name those different pieces and happy to answer any questions about what those implementation plans and codes hold. At the end of the day, what it really tells us is that these sales taxes have to be used to purchase and operate buildings for supportive housing. And the population that needs to be served is dictated by our implementation plan, that those folks are chronically homeless or at risk of chronic homelessness. And it uses the federal definition for chronic homelessness under our implementation plan. That is folks that earn 30% of area median income and below, folks who have experienced homelessness for 12 months or longer. And then you'll note, and we've gotten some community questions about the definition of at risk of homelessness individuals. The reason that that was incorporated into the definition was really a recognition that folks don't need housing any more or less when they hit 12 months of homelessness. If they've experienced 10 months, 9 months of homelessness, and they have a certain level of disability and inability to afford an income that will actually sustain them in the basic need of housing, then they need housing now. And so what our at-risk of homelessness definition allows us to do is look at the many intersecting systems that taxpayers are paying the cost of, that are trying to support our communities, and say, how do we best prioritize these units to make sure that we can support our community for those folks who need long-term housing in order to have stable health through housing. And so those are the different definitions and eligibility determinations that we make in being able to move folks into our health through housing building. And if we've got any questions, fortunately, Carol Ann, one of our program leads, is here to be able to answer those as well. If you want to go to the next slide. This just gives a little bit more definition of the kinds of buildings that we are operating. One of what I would say is innovative about our health through housing portfolio is the county really tried to learn from the work that we did in responding to COVID, which in part was purchasing up hotels and other structures to move folks inside into their own units as quickly as possible. What we found is a couple of things. One, when you have your own space, you spread COVID and other potential health risks less. And we also found that when folks have their own space, they have their own door, they can use the bathroom whenever they want, they can sleep as much as they need to, that folks actually do end up healthier. And so we've got some study from the University of Washington that's been published really showing that even when we move folks into a hotel, it's not a whole housing unit, that it really does help them stabilize, help them get a chance at housing stability. And so what this wonderful depiction shows that your city staff wonderfully helped us put together is when we talk about the supportive housing under our health through housing portfolio, we kind of consider our buildings in two different portfolios. The only difference is that some of them have a kitchen and some of them don't. So when we buy an extended stay hotel, which we've purchased in the city of Renton and the city of Federal Way, they have kitchens. they are, for all intents and purposes, full housing units. And when somebody moves into those units, they can expect that they can operate in the same way that I would like to operate in my home. I can cook my own food, I can sleep, I can go to the bathroom, all of those kind of housing things that we expect. When we buy a building that doesn't have kitchens in them yet, it's a harder, complex thing to not be able to have a refrigerator and a stove to be able to cook. My kids would say macaroni and cheese. And so under that scenario, we call those buildings emergency supportive housing. Under the emergency of people experiencing homelessness, we are moving them in right away, even if there isn't a kitchen there. And under the Health Through Housing implementation plan that I referenced, we are committed to using our sales tax funds to make every building in our portfolio permanent supportive housing, which means working with every jurisdiction to be able to convert, to add the kitchens, and to be able to make sure that we're building that whole space out. You'll see here the difference for signing a lease and paying based on income. Part of that reflects that if we can't offer you a kitchen, it's not very fair of us to expect that you're gonna wanna stay there indefinitely. You might decide that you wanna move on when you want to, and therefore we're gonna make sure that we have kind of it's set up in a more flexible way. To get down to the nitty-gritty, it allows folks to stay in the coordinated entry system where they can get a different referral into a different full housing unit. Once we move them into fully permanent supportive housing with that kitchen, they would no longer be part of that referral process. They would be considered fully housed. And so that's where that kind of definite housing comes into play. Again, happy to answer any questions about that. I'm trying to remember, that might be my next slide, but we can go to the next one and find out. Eligibility. I spoke to this a little bit. There are three main factors when we determine eligibility for moving into a building. Chronic homelessness or at risk of homelessness, we talked a little bit about the income level that folks are earning. And then really disability is that third primary factor that I don't think I mentioned earlier. And so what we know is that a lot of folks that are moving into permanent supportive housing and really reliant on that type of housing have significant disabilities that might be physical, might be intellectual or developmental, and might be behavioral. And they might have a behavioral health disability. And so part of that factors in to the fact that if you are 55, nearing retirement, you have a significant disability, you're not currently able to make income, we need to help get you into a position where you can access healthcare, where you can figure out what your path is to be able to participate in community and build that connection and purpose. And some of our folks were able to connect with employment supports and get them really activated on an employment path. Some of our folks, might be 70 years old, they might have significant health challenges, and for them, health looks different. And it's still about making sure that we can connect them to services, connect them to the community, and make sure that folks can stabilize and be as healthy as possible. If you want to go to the next slide, this talks about our referral process. It is, so I would say in the Health Through Housing portfolio, there's kind of two main adjustments that we've made from the typical supportive housing model. One is to acquire buildings as quickly as possible instead of newly developing everything. And the second is our new referral process. We're able to do this because it is fully funded by the county. And that referral process means that we have committed to specific units being available for local referral. And so Carol Ann and the team can talk to you about their work that they're doing in other communities, where we really sit down with the city and coordinated providers and say, how do we make sure that this particular building is an asset for the community, for those who are seeking housing in Redmond, in the East Side, with your East Side providers. So you'll see here that 35% from the very beginning of the time that we open the building are set aside for those Redmond referrals. As we keep moving forward, our goal is to take another 30% of those units and really prioritize those for Redmond and community-wide referrals. We also, though, start to look at regional referral processes. We know that some folks might be in Renton right now, but originally were from Redmond, or they might be in Lake Forest Park right now, but they might have a close community or relative that is in Redmond. And so really kind of stitching that together is part of our regional referral process, but you'll see 65% is really intended to be targeted at serving Redmond and Greater East Side community members. You'll see here a couple of those referral partners that we can absolutely answer questions about as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Salvation Army to share a little bit about the operational model and their vision.
Is it on?
Yes.
Awesome. So my name is Matt. I'm with the Salvation Army. I'll be talking a little bit about our vision for the site. And we've got a nice little pyramid graphic, right? Because who doesn't like a good triangle? But the whole idea is this, with PSH, with emergency supportive housing and then permanent supportive housing, is you start with stabilization, right? A lot of these folks are coming in, all of them are chronically homeless or at risk of chronic homelessness, and that means they have behavioral health challenges, they have physical health challenges. There's a lot going on. Living outside for as long as many of these people do, it takes a toll on your body, on your mental health. And so there's a lot of work to be done up front, and that's where a lot of our experience in low barrier sheltering really comes into play, and that's how we want to start. So that's, crisis intervention, that's helping with food, right? That's helping stabilize behavioral health right off the bat, right? And really helping wrap services around these folks. And kind of the next tier after we come out of that kind of period of stabilization, right, then we need to get connected to longer term services. And this is where we really want to be a hub. If you want to partner with us, we will gladly make a space for you in this building, right? And that's starting with health, right? So we envision having a room, much like other health to housing sites, that behavioral health folks or even primary care folks can come in and they can have some of the clients can actually have a private place where they can get a checkup without having to go anywhere. And for many of the folks, that's a big deal, especially if they might have mistrust of the system or even getting to another site. So we really want to wrap health around the clients. Then from there, it's culture, right? What are culturally responsive care? What would that look like? And we really think that's partnering with partners in Redmond already. And so I know we're talking about Urban League, but really anyone, folks that are serving LGBTQ, folks that are serving folks with disabilities, if they want to do classes, if they want to, help them get jobs, we will definitely have community spaces for them to operate. And we think that's really important. Again, if you want to come help, if you want to work with our clients, we will make a space for you. And the advantage of this hotel that we're converting is there is a lot of space, right? It's 100 rooms, but there's also 140 existing. And so some of that will be converted into office space, but there's also big community rooms and rooms for providers to operate. And we're really excited about that. Oftentimes space is at a premium at our sites. And so this is a real privilege and treat to be able to kind of craft this from the beginning that we can actually serve folks and really have space for people to come in and that not infringe on existing staff space, right? That's often sometimes a trade-off is where you're kind of moving staff around so providers can come in. And we really don't think we'll have to do that. We really think we can have a both and approach to having our staff there and having partners come in really whenever they want. And so I know a lot of the work Arlene is already doing is reaching out and building these partnerships. And we want to be good neighbors. We really want to partner and be part of kind of the collaboration and the continuum of care that already exists within Redmond. And then finally, that last piece is hope. And for clients, it's something that we really take a lot of pride in with the Army. We do some surveys on hope with our clients, but something we really believe in is, folks that are coming through this system, it's really a very undignified place to be, right? If you're homeless in our community, it's not a fun place. And a lot of what we believe, the deeper magic of what we do is restoring dignity. We have all these services and that's great. And we have all, we do case management, we connect, but ultimately I think some of the most powerful work we do is actually help people restore their human dignity. And we think that leads to them being more hopeful about their life and their future and where they're going and then how they interact with the community in general. And ultimately that leads to hopefully a better community for all. So that's kind of the stepping stones that we have up there. I think we can go to the next slide. So I think the other piece we really want to talk about is that there's always going to be people around. Permanent supportive housing, right? It's the permanent piece. That's where we're going, that they have a long-term place that they can stay, but also supportive. And we really believe in that. And this is not just kind of a normal affordable housing project, right, where there's not staff. There will be staff similar to some of our shelters, but it will look 11 plus kind of support staff, 4 to 5 case managers. So it'll look very different than kind of your traditional shelter. We want to contract to have a behavioral health specialist on the team. We want to have a resource coordinator to really partner and kind of wrap services around. And then we talked about having that space available. We imagine there'll be 2 leadership positions, kind of managers on site, and then we'll have a kind of a director over this. I'll have kind of another project, but that will be the ultimate kind of authority. But there will always be someone there. There will always be a support staff, and during the day there will be case management support and behavioral health support. I believe that's all.
That's my cue to take over for the next slide. Thank you so much, Matt. This shows the engagement timeline. This was provided to council a little bit previously when the Salvation Army as the vendor was originally introduced. This information about the engagement timeline kind of from the introduction to occupancy was created. So Salvation Army was announced. We had that kickoff and kicked off with the community advisory group in early October and had an open house. The people that attended were very supportive. We had several council members there. To a person, while there is curiosity and interest in being successful, I didn't get the sense of any judgment about what they were going to expect from the project. In November, we're here with you to review the operational agreement, and in December, it's our hope that the council will approve that. The Citizens Advisory Group will continue their work. Seraphy will speak to that in a minute. And we will keep the council posted on what those activities, and then our hope really is in Q1 of next year, we'll be bringing people inside into this building. Just to say a little bit about the governance, I think Kelly covered this quite well. We went through that process of complying our code to the Washington state mandates for allowing essentially permanent supportive housing, emergency housing, and transitional housing and shelter in the city of Redmond. That was mandated in House Bill 1220 and House Bill 1590, and the income tax or the tax that Kelly referred to earlier to fund it was there. The RCW, as it got converted into 35A 21305, basically says cities can't prohibit these uses. They are fundamentally housing. But we also want to make these populations successful. I mean, to Matt's point, we want to give people a dignified place to live that gives them the chance to recover from kind of the insults of living outside, and then essentially integrate to our community and be successful. The King County codes, Kelly spoke to, and then you are all familiar with our City of Redmond code that was adopted in 2022, in February 2022. It was a good piece of work. The operational agreement and the services agreement between the county and the Salvation Army essentially flow from that work that you did previously. With regard to the code requirements, I just wanted to kind of go through really briefly. This matrix shouldn't look unfamiliar to you. It was one that we produced back when we were doing the code update, and it basically talked about the role of each of these, the documents that had to be created and adopted before occupancy could occur at the Health Through Housing facility in Redmond. So the operational agreement is the one that's in your packet in draft form. The services, and that is the single agreement actually that is approved by the Redmond City Council. The other agreements that are being worked on kind of contemporaneously is the service agreement that the county is the ultimate approver, the safety and security plan, the community relations plan, and the program code of conduct are all documents that the CAG are providing input into and will be working on in the coming months. With respect to, it's kind of a little a nit. The county is actually an applicant in this case for the tenant improvements. They have had a pre-application conference, and we will be getting permits from them to do those conversions of the units from the single rooms with bathrooms to rooms that have kitchenettes and bathrooms, and that will occur over time. But the county and the operator are responsible for filing those permits, and the city will ultimately go through the review and approval process like they do with any other permit in the normal course of business. And then Kelly spoke to the local referral planning and the process that our outreach coordinator will use. TISA has already been very involved in the conversations and will be working closely with Salvation Army and the county to ensure that the residents in Redmond that need this housing facility are accommodated there. And with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Sarah Fee to speak to the work that the Community Advisory Group has been doing.
Thank you, Carol. I realized I pulled that away from you too early. So the Community Advisory Group is made up of nearby businesses, residents, subject matter experts, particularly from Porchlight, and we have a representative from Pride Across the Bridge, who's also been or just started getting involved, as well as developers that are in Overlake. And so this group has now met 2 times, primarily as a way to get to know each other, learn more about the project, and then start taking in their initial questions and concerns. And so we've taken those in, and the next step for our next meeting is that Salvation Army and King County will be providing them the draft code of conduct and public safety plans later in December. And so just wanted to share that that work, again, is kind of ongoing and primarily their role. And, the other thing to note, too, is that we had to really prioritize who could be on the CAG because there's a lot of interest in this project, and so we really tried to keep it tight to people who are right in the immediate vicinity of the project. The timeline that we are currently on is we've had a couple meetings. We'll have 2 more in December, and then the goal of having 1 to 2 more in January and wrapping up our work. Next slide, Brooke. Thank you. And then the next steps, as we've talked about, we have kind of these ongoing internal meetings with King County and Salvation Army. We're continuing to convene the Community Advisory Group. We are engaging with you all now. We went to FAC, and we're at our staff report today, and we are hoping for a December 5th consent item. And then that will allow us to continue our work. I've been kind of, just to give a thing as Carol went through, but the operational agreement is kind of like the umbrella framework, and then each one of those plans are like the spokes underneath it that we're continuing to do work on. And then one of those spokes is completing the pre-construction activities. So we'll also have meetings starting on construction, and then also have meetings starting on referrals, and then we also have meetings going on with the public safety partners. So I just want you to know there's a lot of coordination. I feel like, as I've been talking to my team, I'm just like all health through housing all day the last few months. And then very excited that Salvation Army, once we're able to kind of have this work progress, we'll be able to start hiring their team, and we'll continue to have then a referral network that will be made and have all the plans that are going to then be approved by our police chief and Carol. And we should be able to open the building and start accepting residents in the new year. So with that, I just want to say there's also a lot of questions that we've had, of course, to this topic, not only from you all, but from community members. And that, I don't know if you saw, but you have a 7-page issue matrix that was included. And so with that, I want to make sure that we can open it up for further questions.
Well, thank you all very much. I, once again, really appreciate all of you coming this evening and going through that, and actually quite a short period of time considering all the work that has gone into this and where we need to go with it. And with that, I'll open up to council members if they have questions about the operating agreement. Council President.
Thank you. So I know the matrix response for the my question about having a check-in every 6 months for the first 2 years was that we can ask for one at any time. So I'm putting in my official request for a check-in every 6 months for the first 2 years, because I know a lot of us are very interested in the progress of those kitchenettes and how that's looking and how the program is going. And I know our community is going to be very interested. So just putting that request in now. Just did want to publicly say, I know it's in our matrix, that I know one of the big questions community had was around previously incarcerated folks living in these projects. And this is kind of the point of this, because previously incarcerated folks are at higher risk for not getting access to housing. So I just wanted to say on the record that denying those folks that service would be illegal. And if you believe in the justice system, then you believe that folks are coming out of incarceration and have been rehabilitated. And this is a chance for people to get back up on their feet. So I fully support this, believe in this, and I look forward to working together.
Thank you so much. I see Councilmember Fields.
Thank you. So I've got 3 questions. And Matt, if we could go back to your pyramid chart for a second. So on the far left of that chart, and I recognize that this is a transition, and I get it. I understand the importance of how it's laid out from stabilization to a strengthened community, and appreciate that. But I'm curious about the emergency to permanent supportive housing transition. From what I heard earlier, that the only difference is a kitchenette, and this implies sort of that that individuals go through a process that takes them from emergency to permanent supportive housing. So am I misunderstanding that? That's question 1.
Yeah, I just put emergency to permanent supportive housing on there just because that's representing the model change. That has nothing to do with our processes or procedures or the services that we offer. So yeah, the kitchenette is the only difference. All of this stabilization work will be the same from the emergency side to the permanent side. So your understanding that the kitchenette is the only difference is still correct.
So you can see where somebody might be confused by this chart with those words on there, though, correct?
Yeah, sorry, my triangle didn't live up to the expectation.
That's
I need
not
a better
true.
triangle. Should I do a square next time? Would that be more?
No, it has nothing to do with the triangle or the square. It has to do with the words. This is about people. This chart is about people, and correctly and very graphically shows the transition, an important transition. But when you attach the emergency to permanent supportive housing, which is really a construction issue, that's why I was confused. So, no biggie. And second question, and I
Councilmember
Go
Fields,
ahead.
can I just
Yeah.
also add something to that? I mean, that has been something we've been talking about with the county consistently about the conversion and the pace of that conversion. And I do just want to note that those building upgrades as part of the operational agreement are identified to be completed by the end of 2026.
Yeah, no, and I read that in your data earlier, and I understand. Well, that's actually my second question is, and I asked it last week. Since we knew this, and as someone earlier said, we learned as a result of COVID, and it seems fairly important from a stabilization perspective. Why are we taking so long, and why have we not done anything on that? Are there reasons? And I don't think that's a completely unreasonable question to ask.
Yes, thank you for the question, Council Member. I can start by, I think, shedding some light on the activities of the Health Through Housing Initiative as a whole and the entirety of the portfolio that we're managing, and then I can share some specific details about the work that's underway for the Health Through Housing Redmond site. So zooming out a little bit, we have 11 county-acquired properties that we are standing up simultaneously through Health Through Housing. At the same time, because these are county-acquired and county-owned facilities, all of our structural work for these facilities must go through our Facilities Management Division. That is the part of the county that's responsible for all county-owned buildings. Everything from Health Through Housing sites to Harborview is supported by Facilities Management Division, and they have their own processes, both when it comes to procuring the work, scoping out the work, and then deploying internal staff and also contractors and vendors to do that work. We've been, like I just mentioned, tracking that work and implementing that construction work across all county-owned facilities at the same time. And so I understand that from the city's perspective, it makes total sense that the impression would be that this building has been in the county's hands for a very long time, and why has this work not happened? I think understanding that that we are commencing this work with all buildings at the same time can lend some needed perspective to that. Also, some of our conversion timeline for this building was very much impacted by the temporary use of the building that Kelly mentioned a moment ago, in which we used the building to support an influx of folks seeking refuge and asylum. And so our major conversion work was temporarily put on hold. We did not initiate conversations with facilities management around doing some of the substantial rehabilitation to the building, because we knew that there was going to be an interim use and that we were going to be managing a large number of folks on site. I can tell you that since then, we have absolutely, stepped, sort of full throttle on engaging the conversion work that needs to happen there. And I can share that from our facilities management team, we've been informed that to date 2 pre-application meetings have taken place between King County and the city of Redmond. We have made significant progress on the overarching architectural and engineering procurement that FMD runs that will bring on architectural and engineering services. The next round of procurements is going to be for a contractor and a general contractor and a construction team who will work side by side with architectural and engineering to come up with a detailed scope and timeline for actually doing the on-the-ground construction work. Once we have the details for all of those scopes laid out, we will then continue to work with City of Redmond and with Carol's team in particular to be able to execute that work. So in summary, 2 pre-application meetings have happened already in 2023. There's significant pre-planning work underway, and we are in early stage conversations about the specific details of the construction phasing.
Okay. I hear you. It sounds like a capacity issue. Also sounds like somewhat of a use interference issue. And I'm assuming that the current use of emergency supportive housing over the next 2 years, beginning early 2024, will not be the interference. Someone's got that plan. But in any case, I appreciate your answer.
Absolutely.
And then
Councilmember Fields, if I could just elaborate just a tiny bit more. You were correct. I just wanted to affirm that you're correct that we do not anticipate, as you put it, any interference of use moving forward. Our plan is to both house folks as emergency housing and to do phased construction work, broken up, wing by wing, you might say, so that we can, house folks, move folks inside as was initially intended for this building, but also really begin that work to install kitchenettes. I think this is also a good time just to clarify from the county's perspective. You've heard us use both the terms emergency housing and emergency supportive housing tonight. I just wanted to name that those are interchangeable. We are considering them to mean the same thing. I think emergency housing is a term you're going to hear us moving forward. As a division, we have decided to use that term because it more closely aligns with how the Department of Commerce is talking about emergency housing. So we are phasing out the term emergency supportive housing, and we'll be talking about this as emergency housing, but for all intents and purposes, they are exactly the same. There's no difference in the service model being discussed.
Great, thank you. So my last question sort of ties to that, and I did ask this last week, and I'm going to try to be a little clearer today. And I think I know the answer, that the potential for someone who needs housing to be in these units, it is not changed whether it's permanent supporting permanent supportive housing or emergency supportive housing. In other words, the criteria, if someone applies or someone is referred, it doesn't matter which of that words you use as far as the potential for someone to be selected, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then the follow-up to that, this is sort of goes to the heart of my concern, and I totally appreciate Councilmember Forsyth's point about someone who's been imprisoned and the opportunity to get a decent resume and get back into a place in their lives where they can be healthy and not return to prison. So, and I think this is something that would help with the whatever that word is, recidivism. But here's my question: if by the definition of chronic, let's say hypothetically, anecdotally, there is a mom with a child, and she has housing, but something dramatic happens in their lives where they lose housing, and they've only lost this housing for a month, but it's pretty clear that the services and help is not available, and they have a child. How does that stack up in an application with someone who has been without housing for 12 months and is in completely different circumstances, might be drug addiction or some other reason? How is the mother in my hypothetical situation less likely to get housing because they haven't been unhoused for a short period of time, or is that seen as someone described it as at risk?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Fields, and you're right, I think we did address it in the issues matrix, but because we've got about 15 minutes left with this, I just want to say shortly that, as you know, we are creating housing for people from 0% AMI, which is what this building is mostly. Chronically homeless is typically people making 0 to 30%, which is actually the housing that we struggle the most to provide in Redmond. So I'll just say on a policy side, we're very excited about this project because it will help us meet some of our housing goals for Redmond at the state level. But we also, for this scenario that you're giving, there are also other kinds of housing programs that we're creating that you'll see at the 50% level, 80% level, and above. And so this is one part of our housing strategy. It's not the only one, but it is a very important one for Redmond. So I'll just leave it there unless the county wanted to add anything else, but I'm happy to also follow up with you, Councilmember Fields, about how we're supporting other residents in Redmond.
Thanks, Seraphy. That's exactly right. And I would just add that the county is playing a direct role in receiving referrals that come into Redmond. And part of the reason we designed the Health Through Housing referral process to be that way is because we know as a county, our division sort of has the bird's eye view of what resources are out there and what resources we can bring to bear. And so if there are referrals, when there are referrals that come in that don't quite meet the population that we are intending to serve for Health Through Housing, our staff is positioned to immediately share that referral with the right program that has county funding or a program that is specific to the city of Redmond so that we can appropriately match folks to the right resource. But we absolutely want to avoid, being in any sort of situation where we simply turn a person away. The intention is to either match folks with Health Through Housing if that's the right fit, or to give them a warm handoff to the right resource.
Thank you. I have Councilmember Anderson and then Council Vice President Kritzer.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the presentation as well. Just a quick question. This is on slide 5, and I wanted to make sure I understood the terms of the lease for emergency housing versus permanent supportive housing. This, I think, forgive me if I forget your name, Kelly? Awesome. So signing the lease and paying based on income, you said that there wasn't one, but is there an option for emergency housing to sign a lease?
I will do my best to respond, and then I may also ask our partners at the Salvation Army to talk about how they usually engage program participants. The idea here being that a lease needs to be able to hold for a fixed structure. It speaks to a housing situation under landlord-tenant law, and so that specific vehicle doesn't always apply under our emergency housing form. And so oftentimes our providers will put in place other types of participant agreements and things like that to be able to kind of drive the same type of service terms and kind of the back and forth agreement that will be in place. So I don't know if Salvation Army has anything else for you tonight.
Yes, I can speak to that. Arlene Hampton, Director of Programs. We will have a really robust orientation process that each individual, each resident that comes through the program will have to complete, and that will include a code of conduct. It will also include an agreement. We will go over, the safety. We'll also make sure that we are providing resources from right when they enter. So if we know there are resources that they're needing to get connected with, as Matt showed on the triangle. The stabilization piece, that will be something right at orientation we'll be able to have based on the assessment that they'll do as part of the orientation.
Okay, just to clarify this, so they will, because the difference in the label of emergency housing, the permanent supportive housing, the main difference is there's no landlord-tenant agreement. So there will not also be one offered to the folks that are in emergency housing because it doesn't have a kitchenette. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Council Vice President?
Make a comment and then add a question. Just first of all, thank you all so much, both to our providers as well as to King County. Just looking at that map of where the different sites are, for me, I see it as a really great opportunity and responsibility for us here in Redmond to be able to host this site. And in particular, I think, as I appreciated the coverage of how we'll think about referring people to the site, and recognizing that we are going to be one of only 2 sites on the east side. And, for people who do call the east side their home, but may not have stable housing, to be able to be one of those locations where, throughout the whole regional area, people can find that housing, I think is really wonderful. So I'm just really excited for this project and wanted to say that. I also appreciated what you said about working with community-based partners and organizations, and I hope that our amazing human services staff will connect you with all of our wonderful culturally responsive organizations in our community, because we have just so many of them. And I know that I also connected recently with folks at Evergreen Health, and they were really interested in being able to collaborate with you all and be connected as this facility's opening. I had asked a question because I have been getting questions from groups that work on food security, just around food on the site, and there was kind of a brief answer in the matrix, but I was hoping the folks from King County could share a little bit more about the plans, or maybe our provider, the plans around food access for those who will be living in the facility.
Thank you for the question. I'm happy to start us, and then maybe Salvation Army, you want to elaborate. But I can tell you what's standard for all of our emergency housing contracts is a requirement for the housing operator to partner with the county to provide meal service for residents while the building is in an emergency housing formation. So, we know folks don't have kitchenettes. We're not expecting them to be able to prepare their own meals. And so we step in by preparing meals for them. And also by connecting folks through a variety of capacities to healthy and culturally responsive food options, produce, small culturally specific markets, whatnot. The 2 ways off the top of my head and how we facilitate that is, one, through our dedicated mobility supports through King County Metro. King County Metro has brought on board a phenomenal range of healthier housing specific resources that are going to be available to residents in our buildings, both in the emergency housing phase and in the permanent supportive housing phase. They've provided a fully loaded
ORCA card to every single Health Through Housing resident. Same level of access that we get as county employees, which I can tell you is very robust. They've also got right now 3 Health Through Housing mobility navigators. Their long-term plan is to have 3 mobility navigators available per site. So it's going to be a super accessible resource. These are going to be folks who are on site at our buildings who are able to accompany people as they make their trips. So if somebody needs to navigate public transit to go to the grocery store, we're going to have a mobility specialist there who's able to make that trip with them, who's able to help them map out, all the different transit resources. So that will be available. I can also tell you that we've got something that Metro is referring to as an essential needs trip assistance program. And that's designed to step in with a Lyft or Uber-like option when we know transit is not going to cut it. So, if somebody is in Redmond and they've got an appointment or a store that they want to shop at in White Center, we're going to be able to get them there through this Essential Needs Trip Assistance Program. So that's one way that we're going to be able to support folks in connecting to food security needs. The other way is through our contract, like I just mentioned, with our operators. And we've actually brought on board an organization that's based in South King County, I believe Renton, the Emergency Food Program. It's a smaller Black-owned organization that the county identified through a competitive procurement specifically around food security and food access needs. And so their entire model is being able to provide what they call food boxes. And we have, as one of their customers, have the opportunity to customize the food boxes that residents receive. So for every single Health Through Housing building, we're facilitating, a sit-down conversation between the emergency feeding program and the operator. So in this case, the Salvation Army. And the city partners are welcome to join that conversation as well. But in that conversation, we can tailor the food box service to the specific nutritional, cultural needs of the folks who are living on site. And so that provides, I believe, 3 meals a day, 5 days a week.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh, did you have a?
Just quickly, in addition to what was just mentioned, the Salvation Army currently is already on the east side in Redmond serving meals through our east side core, and we will also be utilizing that core to outsource and provide meals for the permanent supported housing as well.
That's fantastic. And just one last comment before I will let others speak, but I did want to note one question that I had asked during our last touch on this was about the limit on 100 people. And I just wanted to say, I know that we do have provisions if we can go beyond 100. I know that you're planning to actually use the 40 extra rooms for other types of spaces. And but I just wanted to encourage, if it turns out that there could be use of those rooms to be able to house more people, to please come back to us and update the agreement so we can use this site to the maximum support for people in need. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you so much. I know we are short on time, but I'll add my thanks. It is so helpful to be in conversation with you all today. I have maybe a question for Ms. Sanders or Ms. Ryder. It would be helpful to hear, and so that our listening community can hear about the funding source for the renovations that are going to take place between now and the end of 2026. Is it solid, secured, stable? We anticipate no road bumps with that?
That is correct. It is solid. The Health Through Housing sales tax was created as a permanent revenue source, while the tax plan and spending plan has to be updated every, I believe it's 8 years. The actual tax goes in perpetuity, and we are allowed to bond against that. And so for all capital resources, we're able to kind of look out into the future and make sure that we can commit to that. The plan also commits the creation and renovation of these buildings as the paramount goal of that tax. And so it really does come first for our spending. This is the, I believe, second building that we have committed to for the renovations. As I've shared with city staff, the only building that we intend to renovate first is Kirkland, and that is just because it doesn't have some of the basic needs that we need for the building in order to make sure that it is safe for the residents. And so Redmond really is, as Carol Ann shared, a priority for us, and we feel confident.
Wonderful. Thank you. That is so helpful. For my part, I think that this operating agreement achieves a few things. Number one, it means that when we do our part on December 5th, we are going to have done our part to help get those doors open and available to our neighbors as quickly as possible, especially as we head into winter. I think we've also achieved that our city's neighbors and our neighboring cities are going to have the resources here for our folks who are already here and part of our community. And I think it's been demonstrated that the staffing and the services provided will reflect the intent that we have been discussing for more than 2 years now. So thank you so much. Very much looking forward to adopting this on the 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Carson.
So I just had a quick question about the construction of the kitchenettes, and so is that going to be done? So you obviously said that there's a process that your facilities folks will go through, but is it a bid? Is it like a bid contract, or is it being done internally, or how does that work exactly?
Sure, I'll make my best attempt at answering this, and if you have follow-up questions, we can certainly circle back. It is a bid process. It's a two-part bid process. The first bid that we are putting out competitively is for architectural and engineering services. The second bid is for general contracting and construction services. There are some instances in which King County will do the work directly. I'm not sure exactly, what those parameters are when King County chooses to do the work in-house versus going out to a contractor. But I can tell you that the intention is to have third parties do the vast majority of the work.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all very much. Thank you for your questions. We anticipate this being on consent on December 5th for adoption of the operating agreement. I want to thank, once again, all of you for coming to Redmond this evening and sharing about this project that we've been looking forward to opening for quite some time. So that's very exciting. And I'm not seeing any other questions. Director Helen, did you want to say a few?
I just wanted to say thank you so much. All the work that the council did in 2022 set the groundwork for us hosting refugees and then also getting to this point in time where we're going to bring people inside from Redmond who have connections to Redmond. And they're our friends, our family members, and I just appreciate your leadership in this regard. And I just would love to see a thumbs up that we're good for December 5th to go on to the consent. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Exactly. Yeah. Yay. And with that, this concludes our agenda for the meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you all.